When you cross the threshold of 70, something changes not just in your body, but in your spirit. Life starts to feel like a book where the plot has finally revealed itself. You've turned so many pages, endured so many chapters, and somewhere along the way, you stop worrying about the things that once held you hostage. The things that once kept you up at night, the things you chased, the opinions you bowed to, they just don't matter anymore. Today, let's talk about 7 things that don't matter after 70. Not because they were never important, but because you've outgrown them. Like a child letting go of a toy that once meant everything. These realizations come quietly, sometimes slowly, but they free you. And in that freedom lies peace. Let's begin with the first. 1. Impressing others. There was a time when appearances ruled your decisions. You bought the expensive clothes, worried endlessly about what people thought of your career, your house, your children's achievements, even the kind of car you drove. Maybe you smiled through things you didn't want to attend just to keep up appearances. You nodded politely, even when your soul whispered, "This isn't me." You invested in image because you thought it defined you. But after 70, that need fades. There's a clarity that comes with age, a peeling back of layers. You start to realize that those whose approval you once sought were often just as insecure as you were. They were performing too. Everyone was wearing masks. And suddenly, you feel a strange kind of freedom, the freedom to just be. The freedom to wear the same sweater 3 days in a row if it's comfortable. The freedom to speak honestly without sugarcoating. The freedom to show up exactly as you are, wrinkles and all. You stop chasing applause. You realize that a quiet dinner with your dog is more fulfilling than a crowded event where everyone's pretending. You stop needing to be liked and start cherishing being understood. That shift is everything. You don't have to impress anymore because you finally know who you are. And that's enough. What matters now is authenticity, not approval. The ones who truly love you, they don't care about the car you drive or whether your shoes match your belt. They care about your laugh, your stories, your presence. You've lived enough life to know that applause fades. And those who clap the loudest often disappeared when things got tough. So now you impress yourself with your resilience, your kindness, your wisdom. And that, my friend, is more powerful than any round of applause you ever received. 2. Holding grudges. If you're over 70 and still holding onto old anger, let me tell you a secret. It's only aging you faster. There's an invisible weight we carry when we refuse to forgive. The sharp words from decades ago, the betrayals that scarred us, the cold silences from people we once trusted, they lodge themselves into our memory like splinters. And over the years, we tell ourselves, they don't deserve my forgiveness, thinking it's some kind of justice. But here's the truth that most of us only realize much later. Forgiveness is not about them. It's about freeing yourself. At 70, you start to realize how little time we really have. The anger you held onto didn't change the past. It just stole your joy in the present. It gave space in your mind to someone who might not even remember what they did. Or worse, never cared. And you? You gave them power. You replayed the arguments. You let them live rent-free in your head while your own peace suffered. But something shifts after 70. You start to feel how precious peace really is. You don't want your last years spent bitter. You don't want to poison your mornings with old fights or cloud your sunsets with past betrayals. You want softness, simplicity, freedom. So you begin to let go not because they earned forgiveness, but because you earned peace. You stop needing apologies. You stop waiting for people to change. You just say, I release this, and suddenly it feels like dropping a heavy bag you didn't even know you were carrying. And no, forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It means acknowledging the hurt and choosing not to let it define your future. It means allowing space in your heart for better things. Grudges don't fit in a life that's trying to lighten itself. So after 70, what matters isn't who wronged you. What matters is who you want to be now. And carrying old pain just doesn't make the list anymore. 3. Chasing perfection. Once upon a time, maybe in your 30s or 40s, perfection was the goal. The perfect body, the perfect house, the perfect career, the perfect family photo at Christmas. You obsessed over details, how clean the kitchen looked before guests arrived, whether your children were achieving enough, whether your life looked put together from the outside. And for a long time, you probably believed that perfection was proof of success. You thought that if you tried hard enough, planned carefully, and controlled every little variable, life would eventually be flawless. No cracks, no messes, no failures. But now, after 70, you begin to see the truth with clear eyes. Perfection is an illusion, and chasing it is a trap. You look back at all those years spent ironing out the wrinkles of life, only to realize that the most beautiful moments were often in the mess. The birthday party that ended in laughter, even though the cake collapsed. The vacation that went off script, but left you with unforgettable memories. The photos where someone blinked or sneezed, but the joy was real. After 70, your hands may no longer be as steady, your knees may not bend as easily, and your skin might carry more lines, but you begin to embrace imperfection, not as a failure, but as proof of life. Your body has carried you through heartbreaks, births, funerals, dances, storms. Your face tells stories that no filter could replicate. Every scar, every flaw, it's all part of the tapestry. You start to find comfort in simplicity. You find beauty in chipped teacups, old sweaters, handwritten letters, and days with no plans. You no longer strive for the ideal life because now you strive for meaning, ease, and truth. Perfection has been replaced with presence, with gratitude. You finally understand that trying to perfect life is the surest way to miss it. So you loosen your grip. You stop apologizing for being too much or not enough. You smile at your reflection with a gentler gaze. And most importantly, you give others permission to be imperfect too. You forgive their flaws more quickly because you see yourself in them. Perfection doesn't matter after 70, but connection, kindness, and honesty, they matter more than ever. 4. Regretting the past. Regret has a sneaky way of hanging around. It can sit quietly in the back of your mind for decades, only to resurface in the quiet moments when you lie awake at night or stare out the window during a quiet afternoon. You remember the choices you didn't make, the things you didn't say, the people you let slip away, the dreams you postponed. Maybe you regret working too much. Maybe you regret not saying, "I love you" more. Maybe you regret not standing up for yourself when it mattered. In your younger years, regret can feel sharp and unforgiving, like a wound that keeps reopening. You replay scenarios like old film reels, wondering how life might have unfolded if only you had turned left instead of right. But something softens after 70. You begin to see that regret is a visitor, not a resident. It can knock, but you don't have to let it move in. You realize that every mistake was part of the path that led you here. Even the wrong turns shaped your perspective, deepened your compassion, taught you something real. Would you have lived differently if you had known then what you know now? Of course, but you didn't. And that's okay, because you did the best you could with what you had at the time. Regret loses its grip when you begin to practice acceptance. Acceptance doesn't mean pretending the past was perfect. It means acknowledging it without being defined by it. It means giving yourself the same grace you'd give a friend. You look at your younger self now, and instead of criticizing, you start to comfort them. You say, "You were trying. You didn't know everything. You were growing." And that small act of self-forgiveness? It changes everything. You also realize that regret has a way of shrinking when you're focused on what you can still do. Maybe it's too late to rewrite certain chapters, but it's never too late to write the ending differently. You can still call someone. You can still say thank you. You can still start something new, even if it's small. You can still matter. At 70, the past becomes a place of memory, not mourning. You learn to honor it, learn from it, and let it rest. Because there is peace in saying, "It was what it was, and I am who I am because of it." You don't have time for regret anymore, not because you've forgotten, but because you've finally decided to live forward. 5. Trying to change people. When you're younger, there's this persistent hope, or maybe a belief that you can fix people. That if you love someone hard enough, explain things clearly enough, or try just the right way, you can get them to see what you see. You try to change your spouse, your children, your friends. You think if you point out their flaws gently, or not so gently, they'll grow. They'll adjust. They'll become who you think they should be. But the truth is, all that effort usually ends in frustration. People don't change because we want them to. They change, if at all, because they want to. After 70, this realization hits you with a calm certainty you cannot shape another person's soul. And more importantly, you no longer want to. Not because you've given up on people, but because you've finally made peace with the idea that everyone is on their own journey. You start to see people differently, not as projects, but as beings. Flawed, beautiful, stubborn, evolving humans, just like you once were and still are. You remember how much it hurt when others tried to fix you. You remember the resistance, the guilt, the shame. So you stop doing it to others. You begin to love people as they are or not at all. You stop forcing relationships to fit your expectations. You let your adult children live their lives without giving constant advice. You stop trying to control how your partner handles things. You stop pushing friends to be more like you. Instead, you listen more. You observe. You accept. And in that acceptance, something incredible happens. Your relationships deepen. People feel safer around you. They feel less judged. Conversations become softer, more real. You create space for authenticity. Trying to change others no longer matters after 70 because you've learned the only real work worth doing is your own inner work. You realize that peace doesn't come from fixing others, it comes from letting go of the need to. You begin to say, this is who they are. I can love them here or I can walk away, but I won't try to mold them anymore. And just like that, you free yourself. You give up the exhausting tug of war. You choose stillness instead of struggle. Because at this age, you want harmony, not control. 6. Status and material wealth. Status. Recognition. That rush of being somebody. In your 30s, 40s, even into your 60s, the world often judges you by what you've accumulated. How big your house is. What title you hold. Whether you dine in expensive places. What neighborhood you live in. What your clothes say about your bank account. And without realizing it, we often tie our self-worth to these external things. But then comes your 70s and suddenly it all feels hollow. Not because wealth is bad, not because having nice things is wrong, but because you start to understand that none of it defines who you are at your core. You look around your home and the things that matter most aren't the designer furniture or the fine china. They're the photos of loved ones. The worn chair where you read bedtime stories to your grandkids. The coffee mug that reminds you of your late spouse. The old sweater that still smells like the past. Wealth begins to lose its sparkle. Status starts to seem like a game you no longer want to play. And maybe you even laugh a little because you remember all the energy you once spent trying to make it. And now here you are, realizing that the richest people are not always the happiest. That the ones with simple lives often smile more. You realize that freedom is more precious than fortune. That time is more valuable than trophies. That health, love, and peace of mind are the real riches. You also see how temporary everything is. How you can't take a single penny with you. How your name may not be remembered beyond a generation or two, and that's okay. So what matters now? Having just enough to be comfortable. Knowing you lived with integrity. Sharing what you have without clinging to it. Spending on memories instead of things. Giving more than taking. After 70, you begin to measure life not by net worth, but by heart worth. Did you give love? Did you receive it? Did you leave someone better than you found them? Those are the questions that echo in your soul. Not how many zeros sat in your bank account. Because when you're gone, no one will care what car you drove, but they'll remember how you made them feel. 7. Being right all the time. In your earlier years, being right felt essential. Maybe you argued politics over dinner tables, insisted on correcting minor details, or clung tightly to your perspective during disagreements. It wasn't about ego, well, not always, but about principle. You believed your view was grounded, logical, true. And if someone challenged that, you rose to defend it. You felt an urge to explain, to convince, to persuade, even if it meant tension. But after 70, something surprising happens. You begin to feel the weight of always needing to be right and how heavy that burden truly was. And one day, it hits you. Being right doesn't bring peace, but being kind often does. You realize how many joyful moments were dimmed by debates that didn't really matter. How many connections were thinned by a need to correct someone? How many conversations turned cold because one person couldn't let something go? And now, from this side of life, you start to ask yourself a new question, not was I right, but was it worth it? You begin to choose silence over sparring, smiles over smugness, understanding over being understood. Not because you've lost your intelligence or insight, but because you've gained something better, perspective. You see that most arguments aren't about facts. They're about fear, identity, pride. You realize that sometimes people just need to be heard, not corrected. That agreeing to disagree isn't weakness, it's wisdom. And slowly, you stop needing to have the last word. You stop jumping into every debate. You stop pointing out every flaw in someone's logic. Instead, you let conversations breathe. You listen more, talk less. And if someone is clearly wrong but not hurting anyone, you let it pass with a chuckle. You say, that's one way to look at it, and move on. You preserve the relationship rather than winning the round. Because now you understand, love is more important than logic. Connection matters more than correction. And ironically, that's what makes others actually listen to you more. When people don't feel judged, they open up. When they don't feel cornered, they're more likely to reflect. Your calmness becomes persuasive in ways your certainty never was. After 70, being right all the time no longer matters because you've finally grasped the quiet power of grace. Final reflection, what truly matters now? So here we are, 7 things that, once upon a time, consumed your energy, your peace, and your purpose. But now, they simply don't matter anymore. You've outgrown them. Not because they were silly, but because life taught you bigger truths. Impressing others? You now prefer to impress your own heart. Holding grudges? You release them for your own healing. Chasing perfection? You trade it for presence. Regretting the past? You honor the lessons and move forward. Trying to change people? You now meet them where they are. Status and wealth? You measure life in memories, not money. Being right all the time? You finally understand the value of peace over pride. There's a liberation that comes in your 70s, not because life gets easier, but because you finally stop fighting it. You stop clinging. You stop performing. You stop running from your own reflection. And in doing so, you come home to yourself.